In this video, we're going to be covering our lumbar CARs. So CARs are controlled articulated rotations, where we're just actively controlling a particular articulation through its full range of motion there without trying to compensate through any other parts. So for the lumbar version, what we're going to do is we're going to first set up into our quadruped position. This would be the setup usually for our full cat camel. And then from there, with the hands and shoulders, knees into the hips, we're going to drop the elbows down towards the floor. Forehead can be supported on some kind of pad, book, yoga block, whatever we can use to make sure that we're not feeling too much pressure into that forehead there. Something like a pad allows us to even compress our arms to help us create more tension. From here, our knees are still underneath the hips, and then what we're going to focus on is first starting to extend that lumbar region. So we're extending that lower back, pulling it towards the floor. Try not to get too much into the upper back here. Then we're going to take a deep breath in, exhale out through the mouth, create some core tension, and then bring our body to about a 4 to 5 out of 10 squeeze. And then while maintaining that squeeze, we're going to lightly start to now focus on that pelvic tilt. Trying to get that tailbone to tuck in, really focusing on that controlled segmentation. We don't want to just see all of this move up too quickly at once. So we're going to start by slowly trying to engage those glutes, hamstrings, the muscles that allow us to create this action here. Once we find our full extent of lumbar flexion, now we just bring it back into lumbar extension, slowly pulling that lower back down, tilting that pelvis forward, finding the full range of motion we can extend through where there's no pain, and then we just repeat. From there, bring back into lumbar flexion, nice and slow, taking about 5 or so seconds to create that motion. And then into extension, same idea, taking about 5 seconds or so, maybe even longer, to come back down into that extended position. Alternatively, we can also do this from a position where we are supine. So for supine version, we're basically working on our pelvic tilts. So we set up here on our back, shoulders on the floor. The eyes are just looking towards that ceiling. If you find your head slightly extended, feel free to place a towel, pillow, anything like that to help support the head. Now from there, what I like to do is think about keeping those heels lightly pressed into the floor. We can even go toes up so that we don't feel like we're pushing that floor forward, From here, we can start by first extending that lower back so that we can see the pelvis will tip forward. There will be now space between the lower back and the floor. Now, to create that opposite action, so lumbar flexion, what we're going to do, start off again by taking a deep breath in. Exhale, belly button in. Getting a bit of core engagement and shallow breathing throughout. Then we're going to lightly think about engaging those glutes, trying to not get a posterior pelvic tilt. We might even feel some tension into the glutes and hamstrings here, even into the lower abs. And when we get our full extent of lumbar flexion, we'll feel an active push of that low back into the ground. If I continue, you'll notice my hips will come up. We're just going to get to that point where we get that push into the floor, maintain that push for about 3 seconds or so, and then lightly go into that opposite pelvic tilt, so anterior, now engaging the hip flexors and the low back muscles. That will slowly allow us to create that space again between the floor and your lower back. So we just repeat, going through that motion, light press through the heels, engaging glutes, lower core, as well as hamstrings to help us get into that pelvic tilt, and then slowly reversing into that opposite direction. What we want to do is about 5 to 10 reps here, nice and controlled, or whatever we have programmed for the intended amount of work that you have.